Hi, this is Gurma once again. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the heart. Is our hearts desperately wicked? We've heard that in church a lot, or at least I have anyways, when I was going for many years. And of course their top proof text would be in the Old Testament. But we have to rightly divide the word, because the cross is the dividing line that changes everything between the Old Covenant and New Covenant. Now, under the Old Covenant, that may have been true, that the human heart was desperately wicked. But we're now under a New Covenant where God promised that He would put a new spirit in us, a new heart, and He would write His laws in our hearts. So, no, the human heart is not desperately wicked after the cross. The human heart is pure and righteous to the core, and we can trust our hearts. We can follow our hearts wherever it leads us, because God's Spirit lives in our hearts. If God's Spirit lives in our hearts, then it's one. Our hearts are one with His Spirit, and we can trust where our hearts are telling us. So when you listen to your heart, you're really listening to the voice of God. And He does promise to give us the desires of our hearts. Not just that He promises to open doors to fulfill those desires that are really in our hearts, but that He would actually put His desires, His specific desires for you and for me in our hearts. So really your heart's desires are His desires. They're all one. Which brings me to my next point. Do we really need the Bible these days? Or did we ever really need the Bible to really establish our own moral compass? And I don't believe that. I used to look to the Bible for moral instructions, or basically instructions on how to live my life. I mean, it was my textbook. It used to be my textbook. But it's not anymore. I look at the Bible as more of a tool that helps me, that points me to Christ. It points me to the Christ who lives in me and lives in us. It's a tool that really can, like many other tools, can really help us understand the gospel and our oneness with God and our righteousness with God. But I would not look to the Bible these days, me personally, to determine how I should live my life in any way, shape, or form. I go by my heart now. I trust the Spirit who lives in my heart to guide me into what is good for me, whether it's a good idea to do this or whether it's a good idea to do that. You know, I shouldn't have to go to the Bible to get those things, to get the answer to those things. And I really shouldn't have to ask a pastor, you know, would it be a good idea to do this activity? Or would it be a good idea to do that activity? You know, follow your heart. Your heart's going to tell you whether it's a good idea or not. Another thing too is that when God speaks to you, it's amazing. Whenever you get a gut feeling about something, and you get a sick feeling in your gut, you entertain the idea of going down a certain path, but you get a sick feeling in your gut that tells you, you know, this just isn't right, it's not a good idea. That's probably the Lord talking to you. He's warning you. Your Heavenly Father, your Father in heaven, who loves you and wants good things for you, He's warning you, and He's fully persuaded, much more than you are, and saying, son, daughter, don't go down this path. This is not a good idea. You know, you're going to get hurt. You're going to hurt others in the process. And so that sick feeling, you can basically trust it. And I've had that happen before a few times when I've entertained thoughts of going down a certain path. You know, I won't get into it specifically right now, but I think I've made my point. So the point is that God speaks to our hearts. We don't need to go to the Bible for instructions on how to behave. Now, you might ask, well, what do you do about all these instructions that Paul gives, or Peter, James, and John gives about conduct. Well, it was their opinions, okay, that were written for that specific audience at that specific time in that culture. Now, they certainly knew more about the culture than we do. We weren't there back then. So I don't know why Paul spoke in the manner that he did sometimes about certain subjects. Some of it was probably good advice. Then again, some of it was just, take it or leave it kind of deal. Basically it was all take it or leave it, because nowhere does it says, thus saith the Lord. Okay? Paul's writings are not the scriptures, but Paul has a good handle on the grace of God, and a good handle on what the gospel is about, the reconciliation of all things. But when I go to him as my sole source of advice on certain subjects, if he were here today and he had the same opinions that he did back then for that culture, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I would just seek it as advice and put it in the cold storage section of my brain, and maybe come back to it later. But the most important thing is to just accept those things that resonate with your heart, if you know what I mean. If you hear anything that anybody says that doesn't resonate your heart, it doesn't matter who you hear it from, whether you hear it from me or anyone else, because I'm human too. I have my own 2 cents opinions that I throw out there sometimes, and I know that not everything I say is going to resonate with the hearts of people out there. But if it doesn't, certainly don't accept it. And I think that's pretty much it right there. Anyway, I'm enjoying doing these videos. It's been a while, and I hope to get some more in, so I can just to give some food for thought. Okay, grace and peace.